Welcome back to Ride the Stream, where we discuss our favorite TV and film. I am here with my favorite podcasting partner in crime, great friend, Michelle Brittany. Michelle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. We're having a cooling spell. I think we're expecting 80s today, which is nice. Lows of
Yeah.
60s, highs of 80s. I like that. We can have a bit more of that, especially after our first heat wave a couple of weeks ago. So,
Yeah, a bit early for those triple digits for you. So
oh yeah, yeah.
glad to hear it's coming down. Here in the Baltimore area, it's about the 50-degree mark and wet outside. So no complaints. Uh, could open the windows to cool off the house a little bit. But we are here to talk about Falling Skies, season one, episode nine. We are nearing the end of season one. Um, very uh, chaotic episode, I would describe it. A lot of twists and turns. The episode's called Mutiny. It originally aired August 7th, 2011. And yeah, as we're in the 15-year anniversary cycle of this show, um, any initial thoughts before I dive into the synopsis of the episode, Michelle?
Well, a couple of episodes back, you were like kind of like struggling
Hmm.
with it because it it wasn't necessarily genuine to the characters that had been um, developing by that point. And I feel like this is my episode where I'm feeling like some stuff fell together well, other events and characters doesn't. And I feel like there was a little bit of inconsistency, particularly relating to Weaver, who's kind of our, as our El Capitan, as Pope would say, that leads you kind of wondering what quite is going on. Um, and I think it's quite appropriate to say it was chaotic. It felt like an emotional roller coaster and lots of twists. So,
Yeah. Uh, I think I'm pretty much on the same page with you
oh,
with this
good.
episode. Uh, Difficult to watch, just about how um, the relationships were melting away rapidly,
Hmm.
especially after the end of last week, where it seemed like things were reconciling after Weaver abandoned
Yeah.
ship, so to speak. Um, and my synopsis isn't very long, so why don't I
Okay.
dive into that and then we can chat a little bit more about it.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. The penultimate episode of season one, Mutiny, highlights the continued struggles of Weaver as he alienates Tom from briefings and relegating him to sentry duties rather than keeping him informed of the dire situation the second mass is truly in. Tom learns that Weaver has been taking prescription medications to help him sleep and to wake up. And when Tom questions Weaver on this information, Weaver has this new character, Danner. Uh, we'll call him asshole. Put in jail until further notice. This command seems odd, clearly. So
Mhm.
Jimmy, the young teen, I believe, tells Hal, Margaret, and Dr. Glass about this after their scouting report tells them that Skitters and Mechs are blocking their way to Boston. But Weaver doesn't care about this news, and he says they're going to fight their way through.
Mhm.
Knowing this, Jimmy helps him free Tom, and they corner Weaver, telling him that the people have a right to know about what's going on. In fact, after waking up from his injuries from scouting, Di informs Tom that the leader of the force's Porter was actually under attack and unlikely to have survived. And the fourth and fifth mass units have not responded to any communications. Porter's final orders were to abort the attack without confirmation of support. Weaver knows this and yet wants to push on. When they're trying to explain all of this, Pope comes in to save Weaver, yet Jimmy's appearance seems to awaken Weaver from his stupor. He addresses the second mass forces and explains that despite wanting to move forward with the attack, he also has to recognize that they have to protect the civilians who are their future. He asks for 50 volunteers from the fighters and tells Tom he's to protect everyone in his absence. Hal also joins the fight despite not needing to, and Margaret confronts Pope on not backstabbing the second mass, or he'll have to suffer her wrath.
Mhm.
Lastly, Ben and Scott approach Tom and let him know that Ben can hear the radio signals even though no one else can. What does this mean for the fight that lies ahead? It appears this little cliffhanger will hopefully be answered in the season one finale. And that is the episode. I
Good
have to
job.
admit, um, I thought last week's episode with, Weaver falling off the rails and, we'd seen him popping pills and he was drinking last week. And there seemed to be a glimmer of hope for him, recognizing that his wife and older daughter might be alive. This episode is he just seems completely unhinged, where everything seems like a threat to him.
Hmm.
He's afraid that they'll lose their shot at attacking Boston. He's afraid Tom's going to rat him out. Um, and we have this newbie character just like
Out of nowhere, by the way.
I don't understand. So like you had touched on earlier, it felt like this episode forced some of the moments and interactions. It didn't
Hmm.
feel authentic or genuine, like you said. Um, and it just made it hard to really figure out where the show is gonna end up.
Yeah,
And not even for like the end of a season one, but anything beyond it because it felt so scattered.
yeah. I felt like it was buckshot that was, you know, pointed to a wall and just kind of see where do we land?
Yeah.
The character Danner really threw me off because I was like, where did this guy come from? He was, and so I mean, I don't usually go to like IMDb. I don't do a lot of hunting. I try to just face on the merits of the show, what my feelings are. But with his appearance, and I mean, I recognized him, so I was like, I recognize that dude. Where is he from? And so I found, I saw him in some other stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's how I know him. But then I looked, he is in one episode of Falling Skies. So I really feel like the decision to add Tanner, or excuse me, Danner, was a huge mistake because he came out of nowhere. It would have been more authentic I think, the story if you had somebody that we'd seen before. Like, I mean, not that it would be Di, but a Die-like character that we've seen before, like if
Yeah.
Mike was still alive in the show and he decided he's an up-and-comer. I could totally get it. I buy that. But the fact that you basically slot in somebody that you've never even seen in the background of the second mass, and somehow we're supposed to believe that he's just, he didn't arrive from
Moved
any
up the
other.
ranks fast.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, he flew up the ranks so far that we didn't see him before now. So I honestly thought that's a number one. That is the number one thing that I feel like they really got wrong with the episode is throwing him in there. I think they could have done it with somebody else. I think that if they groomed somebody else or kept Mike or kept had somebody like Mike that had been out and working with the main characters so that we would have the buy-in and say, oh yeah, I do remember him. Yeah, he definitely does seem military. I totally get and buy into the fact that Weaver would want to distance himself from Tom because Tom knows his weaknesses and instead have somebody else. Because that's my reading of the episode is that Weaver did not like that Tom knew his weaknesses,
Yeah.
and he was really trying to put him off. That's kind of my reading more than what they kind of presented and what Tom says is that, well, I could see him wanting to work with Danner because Danner is a military career man. That doesn't even really jive because it's like, well, Tom, you're not dumb, and you've got common sense as well as being a professor that everybody was reminded of in this episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just feel like it wasn't ringing true for me with that character, and I just don't know why they had him other than to create, a logjam between Weaver and Tom, which I feel was could have been done without the Danner character.
Yeah. I it felt like this character was created just as a support piece for Weaver in his fractured state. Like if he was truly a military guy, like he would have already been seen.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, where did he come from?
Yeah.
Like so yeah, I completely agree. I don't understand other than him being like the supporting figure of Weaver,
Mm-hmm.
but like you said, they could have picked anyone else we've seen on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it would have made more sense. Um,
Yeah.
were there
I
any other, that was one hiccup. Were there other hiccups that you felt like were pretty glaring for you that made it hard to watch?
um let me think a minute. Well, just to tack on with the Weaver thing, hiccup number two, I feel like kind of a combo here. So number two is the fact that at the beginning, it sounds like it has been a lot of time passed between the scouting mission and them getting ready to go. But it really, at the end, Tom mentions how it's only been a few hours from the time that they got back from the scouting trip. And yet, Weaver deliberately says that he quit taking the pills when he got back. Okay, well, that was only like a few hours prior, so I'm sorry. That doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
I was like, because I was trying to figure out, like, okay, and we know that they only had like 4 days total before they're supposed to, go to action. So my feeling is that there isn't a big gap of time between when they got back from scouting trip to Weaver making the plans to go out and, complete the the plan of attack.
Yeah.
So that was very confusing to me, and I felt like that was a big hiccup because it doesn't when you put it on a timeline, it just does not make sense that it was nighttime, scouting, they get back, daytime, and Weaver's still erratic, even more so. So I felt like that whole bit did a disservice to Weaver kind of coming to terms. And like you say, there's these points that are forced, and I think they had to do something to kind of like raise the bar, create tension, and this is the way that they ultimately went was to have this idea of mutiny. that Weaver was going off the rails again, really.
Yeah.
Not just for the first time. And yet, what is kind of scary is that, well, if he's off the pills, then why is he acting erratic? Because that's the idea is that he wouldn't be acting erratic anymore, right? Because he's
Yeah.
not on the pills. But just because he's off the uppers and downers doesn't mean that he can now sleep and make sound decisions and things like that. So it's really kind of like, it's really awkward because I'm like, just because he says that, oh, well, I'm off the pills. Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, you know? One thing that I was thinking when we were talking about the first point, the first hiccup with Danner, I almost feel like the writers felt like they couldn't pull off the whole storyline of the mutiny without having Danner present, and yet Danner is not really present a lot. The tension is really between Weaver and Tom and how
Yeah.
their interaction is. And I almost feel like it almost feels like a disservice to the actor that plays Weaver. Like almost like, oh, well, we're not sure he can pull it off. Or, well, he might be able to pull it off, or he can pull it off, but we have to double down. That's what it kind of felt like too. Because the actor that plays Weaver is more, what is it? Will Patton, I think is the actor's name.
Yeah.
Um, he was more than up for the challenge of creating a mutinous rebellion through his chaotic actions. I think if they kind of stuck with the pills and not even bring Danner in, I
Yeah.
think that would have created enough of a um, dissension between Weaver and Tom. Because you don't need to have somebody else in there to do it. They just naturally do this. So, um, and because of that, I felt like it kind of leads to the next hiccup, which is Danner suddenly being, or not Danner, I'm sorry, Weaver suddenly coming to his senses when he sees Jimmy
Yeah.
and, rallies the troops together because I don't feel like Tom's message that trusting each other is that important. I mean, it is to Tom, but he was ready to mutiny. So, I don't know. I think there could have been more flavor around that message that could have helped because I do feel like Hal's statement at the end, well, Dad, you're right, but what Weaver says is right too. Well, where, at what point did you feel that Weaver said what you are like, that's the message from the sky. I'm going to follow Weaver.
Yeah.
I, you know, so yeah, that was another trouble spot for me.
Yeah. It felt like there were more grasping at straws and delivering a seamless storyline this episode. With Hal saying that at the end, the only thing I can think of was when I was watching, like, was I guess with Weaver when he's talking to everyone in the gym, and he says that, if there's anyone left breathing in the fourth and fifth, I know they'll be there, which means we have to be there too. I mean, I think that's the only. And also, I think Weaver says he wants to hit him in the mouth or, you know, but I mean, that was the point of the attack anyway.
Yeah,
But it required support. So,
yeah,
yeah, very confusing episode.
yeah. I mean, when you say that about the message, yeah, Weaver believes that if there's anybody left of the fourth and fifth, they'll be there. Therefore, the second, which is more of a complete unit still, needs to be there. Get that. And I mean, I will say that Hal does mention his mom, Ben, and Karen all being reasons for him to want to go.
Yeah,
And I guess maybe to a young man, that's all that's required. I guess maybe I don't necessarily connect to that, but maybe other viewers do. I just feel like I need a little bit more, especially given just kind of what he's been through over the episodes. Um, watching the kids be assassinated right in front of him, execution style,
Yeah.
um, to having doubts about Ben, that seem kind of founded. And yet Ben is the reason. And yeah, you miss the old Ben that was a couch potato, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
but um, yeah, I'm just a little bit surprised. And I felt like, again, I think if they spent just even another 30 seconds or a minute in dialogue, like some of the close dialogue that they had that between Tom and Hal, where they kind of respect each other and things like that. I really felt it was almost offhanded, um, not handled with the same kind of respect that some of the other scenes between them have been handled. And even the bravado that Hal has that, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna go whip their butt, or whatever,
Yeah.
essentially that's the spirit of what even felt a little odd and kind of like, okay, that's a Matt Damon move. Yeah. Yeah,
He's
it was
just
just kind of weird.
yeah. Because Hal doesn't seem like the typical macho male
Mm-mm.
figure, and so that was kind of a macho line.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it just felt like there were moments where, better reasonings could have been made than what we saw on screen.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, even like you said, the conversation where Tom is trying to get Weaver to stop pointing the gun at him, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, you would think that him saying, "Hey, shoot me if it keeps us together, but I'm not going to be the one that tears us apart." You would think that would be something that Weaver's like, "Oh, I just can't
Yeah.
kill you." But it's like seeing Jimmy,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, it's like I feel like they're trying to like connect tiny moments, like where there was the hug earlier in the season between Jimmy and Weaver, and like they're trying to like connect maybe these bonds in a way that just aren't as fluid as we've seen in other shows. And um so I think I would consider this along with my second least favorite episode of the season,
Mm-hmm.
next to the what was it, the
I think it was six.
sanctuary, part of the sanctuary maybe.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The first part of Sanctuary, yeah.
And I and you're talking about the timeline. Yeah, everything's happening so much quicker than you would have thought. Like when
Yeah.
before Tom gets arrested and he's talking to Weaver, it's at that point he's like, "Hey, a few hours ago you were swigging whiskey on a suicide run."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Few hours,
Yeah.
like, and then
And
Hal and
whiskey. When
yeah,
you think of the ramifications of drinking hard alcohol with uppers and downers,
yeah,
you know?
and Hal and Margaret weren't gone that long on their
Mm-mm.
scouting, so they came back. It
No.
was still daytime, even though that was supposed to be, I think, a nighttime, all night thing.
Yeah.
And then, so when you talk about him making that comment at the end of the episode, bing, one cat,
Yeah.
and we were saying, "Oh, I stopped taking the pills." Yeah, like a couple hours ago. Like, what are we doing? So this episode definitely had me feeling all out of step with why it was constructed the way it was constructed. Um,
Yeah.
so I really don't understand the like you said, some of the character moments. I think the one that maybe was most aligned with who they are is maybe Pope. Um, and his growth scale is going like this.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's talking to Matt. And Matt's like, I know what you did to my dad.
Yep.
And Pope was like, well, maybe. And so I think his growth scale is continuing to go like this because he says, well, maybe if you listen to your dad, you won't turn into me,
Yeah.
which I think is a pretty good thing for him to say out loud because he recognizes who he is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would agree with that. I felt like in the scenes where Pope is where he's featured in them, I really felt like he's genuine to the character that has been developing all along. Um, him switching sides, no surprise. It's always been about killing aliens.
yeah,
So the fact that, you know, whoever's pointing the gun at him, he's on their team. Soon as the gun's not pointed on him, then he's back to what can I do to kill the aliens? What how can I help kill aliens?
yeah.
And so I don't think he's deviated from that. Now, what were your thoughts? Because on the whole Scott, Ben, and Ricky line, because I was thinking about it, we've already had the radio kind of feature in the past, the frequency thing,
Yeah.
which we learned through when they were holding the one Skitter prisoner, and then Ricky's response a little bit, but I think it's mostly with the Skitter. So, what were your thoughts about, Ben's reaction to the frequency and then the Ricky conversation?
Um, well, Ricky continues just to be, he has no concern other than getting back with the Skitters.
Yeah.
Like that's his only priority, and he's just waiting for that to happen. It would seem at any point he could walk out and leave and go find the Skitters, you would
Hmm.
think. Um, but he's just there as this, I guess, antagonist to Ben's character. Like
Yeah.
as far as like the opposite pathways that they're on.
Yeah, which is so fascinating, and we've talked about it in prior episodes. Just, yeah, I don't know what is keeping Ricky there because it almost seems like, well, he's healthy enough. If he's so feeling that he's not human and he wants to be back with the Skitters and his dad's no longer there to be, a reason to stay, if that was ever a reason really for Ricky, why doesn't he just take off?
Yeah, I
That's where I'm a little confused with. And I still continue to be I really wish that they would show Ricky's back because I'm really curious if he's also got the same hardening going on around the wounds. We don't really see him. We keep seeing Ben, so they're really pushing Ben's wounds. And the fact that Ricky made the comment that, well, when we change, or, the change is coming, things like that, which is, disconcerting because why is Ben so anti-alien then? And Ricky is so pro-alien. And yet Ben is the healthier kid. And Ricky just seems, I'm sorry to say, just kind of a whiner. And just kind of a ghost in a way. He's really got almost zero personality. And I don't know if he's supposed to be the antithesis of Ben. And that's why he's still around. I'm just not sure. Because even Ben says, you creep me out, dude. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. You're
yeah.
you're a creepy dude. And if you are so pro Skitter, go find Skitters because you feel a sense of family there, and hey, great on you. But that's not what Ben's about. Yet Ben is scared because he's like, how can I hear the Skitters? When are my needles gonna fall out of my back?
Yeah.
And all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and with regards to the radio signal, I think that's the most interesting thing moving forward. Even more than the potential Boston battle or whatever's going to happen, because I have to imagine, because obviously I saw the show, but I haven't seen it since it originally aired.
Yeah,
I have to imagine that his ability to react to these signals and hear them has to play a bigger role for the second mass moving forward.
yeah,
Um, I don't know what it could be, but and we're only seeing Ben's reaction to it. They don't show Ricky somewhere else reacting to Scott playing with the
no.
radio.
Mm-mm.
Um,
And in
and
fact, Ricky even asked Ben, like, well, what's he doing here? Like, if you didn't, if you felt it, you would have figured, okay, something's going on.
yeah, that's a great point.
Versus, yeah. But he's just like asking Ben what's going on here, like he never felt anything. So that also makes me wonder, okay, have the Skitters just kind of given up on him? Maybe they've left him. Um,
Mm,
and as he looks out the window longingly, how are they going to know we're here if they jam up the frequency?
yeah,
Is something that he says. I was just thinking as we're talking about this whole radio thing that, and I don't know how radios work and what you need to have them work, but I would almost think that since they learn that they can cue in on frequency, if they could jam up the frequency when they're doing this hit on the big ship,
yeah,
that would make more of an impact than going hell bent out there with a bomb that, like Pope even says, well, when you start splitting things, you have less time. They're more volatile and things like that. So to me, I'm kind of like, here's another piece of information that would have been good to give to Weaver and to the fighters to give them even more of an edge. The mech ammo is a huge help,
yeah.
you know. And hopefully it's going to make a big difference for the fight. So I'm anxious to see how that's going to play out. That's a point that I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to see what the mechs are going to think when they get hit by one of those bullets.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if they'll be as aggressive once they realize, oh, they can beat the crap out of us now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think the whole radio signal, I do appreciate Ben's character. He was initially not forthright with Scott about his reaction.
Yeah.
But I do like that he came back to Scott and was kind of like, I think that's Ben's way of saying, okay, I can't be afraid of this anymore.
Yeah.
I I want to figure out what this is and see if this is, I'm assuming he's trying to figure out like what it means for him and if it could be useful at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I do like that they are continuing Ben's arc in a way that makes him,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's logical that he was, afraid of what he's becoming, um, why his needles aren't falling off. And
Mm-hmm.
for him to come around like this, I think is a pretty mature step for a teenager to kind of like take the reins and be like, hey, something ain't right with me. Like,
Yeah.
maybe someone can help me figure it out.
Yeah, and I kind of like how, both Ben and Matt are getting, connecting with other people besides Hal and Tom. Because
Yeah.
even though Tom is staying behind, so Ben and Matt will kind of have him again. Ben will still have Scott, and Scott will probably kind of rise up a little bit because of the fact that now Tom will need more assistance from other people since he won't have Hal.
Yeah.
Um, I was I enjoyed that story arc too with Ben and with Scott. I liked that. I really liked even the whole kind of arc of Matt hanging out with Pope.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that here's this little kid, he's willing to kind of buck his dad's directive, sort of. He's pushing the line just a little bit.
Mhm.
He's like, well, I
For
am
sure.
far from you, but not far like my dad necessarily was meaning. So I do kind of like that Matt is, I like seeing him find his way a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, finding his feet with holding his own with Pope, because their first interaction, um, where they talk, you can see like the kid kind of like does this when Pope comes right into his face, and then Pope chuckles, and then like we've already discussed the one where they're getting ready to leave and Pope's going to go with them. And the fact that Matt just holds his own again, and Tom just watches from afar. But
Yeah.
the whole Matt Pope Tom interactions, I thoroughly enjoyed. Definitely need a little bit of that relief from the tension that was really being created by the abrasive relationship that was going on between Weaver and Tom. So.
Yeah. Well, I think we will take a short break
Mhm.
and then we'll come back with some of our questions.
Can't wait.
Hey everyone, it's Travis with Red Stream. Just want to say thank you for watching this video and just here to promote our channel and want to ask one thing. If you can like, comment, or subscribe, one of those things, that would be amazing. That's all I have, and we'll get back to the conversation. And we are back covering Falling Skies, Season 1, Episode 9, Mutiny. If you are familiar with our channel, bing, that's our cat counter. Um, we do a series of two or three questions covering favorite or most interesting scene, favorite most interesting character, and then a third wild card that we'll throw in occasionally. Um, and if you're new, or if you watch and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe.
Hmm.
Um, give us a comment below who your favorite character or most interesting scene is in this episode. Uh, I know this was a struggle episode for you, Michelle. Did you have any scenes that kind of stood out to you as the best of the best?
Yeah, so I've got an honorable mention. Um, and it's almost a toss-up because, well, I feel like maybe my honorable mention is a little more genuine to the characters rather than kind of maybe the one or two other ones that are kind of pivotal, that I think are, kind of pivotal to the episode. I would say, with that in mind, my little caveat in mind, my honorable mention goes to all the scenes with Matt and Pope.
Totally fair. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just really think I really liked their interaction in the prior episode, and the fact that it just that their exchanges continue in this episode is really a lot of fun. Enjoyed that break from all the tension and worry of everything else going around. That even though this is saying and conveying that there is still a fight to be had and there's still, there's usefulness even for a little boy and who wants to participate and give to the fight in the way that he can. So I did really like those scenes. For whatever reason, I don't know that he gravitates to Pope as much as Pope almost respects him through his disrespect of who he is.
Yeah, he's
So
not afraid to tell him
y-
what's going on or whatever.
yeah, he does, and he doesn't sugarcoat. And even though Pope will switch on a dime, you know, he seems really genuine with Matt, and I think it's just to that point, the fact that he doesn't sugarcoat, he doesn't, dance around issues. He's just like, boom, here we go. And I think that Matt has seen how his father seeks to protect him. Al does too. Um, that I like that exchange. And so in the first one, I love how uh, Matt is shining up the ammo, and Pope is like, "Ah, you don't have to shine it up and make it look pretty. Whatever he's doing is fine, but don't spend a lot of time at it." And then, of course, he's like, "So, are you sure your dad was talking about me?" To which Matt says, "Yeah, he said stay away from Pope." Couldn't be any more clear. To which, of course, Pope is like, "Well, why are you here?" "Well, I'm keeping my distance, just maybe not the distance Dad had in mind."
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And then right in that same scene, how uh Pope calls him a prince, and he's like, "I'm not a prince." And he's like, "Well, what's it like to walk around with the Mason brand? That sweet Mason brand." To
Yeah.
which he says, "Well, how do you like, having a girl hair?" And all Pope can say is, "Well, kid, you got to work on your insults."
He says it with a smile, like,
Yep, yep,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah, I all the interactions between them two are really good. And a side comment to that was recognizing Pope. Um, was Scott telling Ben that he had lost Matt to Pope's charm or to the charms
Yes,
of Pope or something like that. So
yep,
even like Scott and other people can recognize the kind of allure of being in Pope's presence. So, and I think you've said it all along, is because he doesn't have this filter that's going to sugarcoat stuff. And I think
yeah,
probably the people are so woundly tight most of the time because they're either afraid of what's going to happen or don't know necessarily because they're civilians what's happening,
yeah,
or even some of the soldiers, and he's just like, hey, this is what's happening, get your shit
yeah,
together, let's do some stuff. Um and it's definitely a needed break from the grim reality in this episode. I mean, I know Dr. Glass referenced, one of my honorable mentions is the Lord's overhearing
hmm
Tom and Dr. Glass talking about the pills, and then
yeah,
she kind of informs them like, "Hey, Weaver came to me looking for some prescriptions on falling asleep and waking up." And she talks about classic addictive habits.
yeah,
Um, and I appreciate that kind of outline of maybe Weaver's behavior being so frenetic, but the timeline of it all, like you mentioned earlier, just doesn't seem, it just
Mhm.
seems like it's boom. Like you would think that all that drinking just didn't happen a few, few hours ago. Like being three cats, because wouldn't he still be kind of drunk on his ass? Like, and so the lack
Yeah.
of clarity there. But I did like, Lord's getting more time. You know,
Yeah.
the after class Annie, she doesn't get a whole ton of time. So it was nice seeing those other characters having like an integral role in trying to kind of decipher why are the wheels falling off of Weaver. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, s- yeah, so going back, yeah, I liked the interactions between Matt and Pope. And even the kind of second one where uh, Matt tells Pope he doesn't like what he did to his dad,
mhm.
double crossing him. Um, it kind of reminded me of um, kids standing up for their parents, like, my dad's cooler than your dad type of thing. I really got kind of that sense with that little bit of exchange, and then I did like how Margaret came up and kind of like said, "Oh, well, how do you like being put in your place by an 8-year-old boy?" And which led off their conversation and him, Pope saying, "Oh, well, you drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you?" You know, the midwife angel, and just being kind of derogatory.
Yeah.
Um, but her not being afraid to say, watch yourself because if you double cross anybody, I'm going to be on you. And so. Yeah, I thought we got a little bit more, but it's still pretty much a mystery about Margaret. But she
Yeah.
has obviously, come into the fold with the second mass. Um, I'm not quite sure that I'm quite aware where she's landing as far as was she staying or was she going? I kind of thought she was staying, but I wasn't sure what your read was on that.
Yeah, it wasn't clear at all. It felt like she was staying because she was warning Pope. Because I feel
Mhm.
like if she was going, she'd be able to keep an eye on him.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's why I'm like, well, that conversation could go like, I'm watching you, and when we're out you know, on the mission, I'm going to be watching you, or I'm going to be aware that you might double cross us,
yeah.
here at at base camp. Yeah,
And I feel like a lot of her scenes since she's been on the show have revolved around being with Hal.
yeah,
So it would feel like it would make sense for her to go too. Um, Unless they deem her like she would be important to be left behind for defenses. But it felt like she was saying
yeah.
that as if she was staying, but I feel like it makes more sense that she would go and be on side by side with Hal.
Yeah,
Um,
that was my thought too, and yet I'm think kind of replaying in my mind. I don't think she was like uh on one of the motorcycles. And
yeah,
of course Day is hurt, so he didn't go
yeah.
because he's not well enough to go. He can't, heal that fast. Um so yeah, I was a little unclear on that one. Um as far as scenes wise. My other one I'm going to say is kind of around how the whole mutiny comes down. That mutiny moment where Weaver goes into the clinic, he's looking for Tom. He gets faced by a face full of guns from Tom, Hal, um, Margaret, Jimmy, even. and just how all that went down, and that in the end, Tom doesn't want to be the reason for the disintegration of the second mass.
Yeah.
Um, so I did like that scene, although there was lots of twists going on. Was Danner even in that scene? I don't think he even was in that scene, was he?
No, he was after he got untied. We didn't see him again until Weaver was talking in the gym. And
Mm-hmm.
which is like if he you would think he would be by Weaver's side after being discovered. Another
You would have thought,
mystery.
yeah. So for clarification, Danner was out in the audience listening to Weaver giving the message. Well, here's what the entire details are. Now,
Yeah.
if you want to fight, I need 50 volunteers. It's interesting, 50. So that would cut their military numbers in half.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting. But I did find, his conversation in the gym, I thought was rousing, particularly after what transpired in the clinic and the kind of back and forth, the twist going on, Pope being involved in that as well.
Yeah.
And so
I
I
will
thought
say
that
the
was a good one.
that scene and the one you mentioned before with Pope and Matt at the end of the episode with Margaret, both of
Hmm.
those were my other honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Um, I just thought they, yeah, the one with Weaver at the end, um, when he's faced with the guns. Yeah, this episode just really, like you said, it throws me off. And it really felt like they had a vision on what they wanted to happen, and then they were
Hmm.
just kind of putting pieces together to make it fit on screen, even if it wasn't like perfectly aligned or whatever. It just yeah, it was even difficult finding favorite scenes.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was your favorite or most interesting?
Scene wise, gosh, I mean, I feel like the few that I said are all kind of up there. Whether I had like a real favorite,
Okay.
I'm not real sure that I had a real favorite. I mean, I wish I could say it was Hal and Tom saying goodbye to each other, but that was kind of had a flippant feel to it. Not
Yeah.
the genuineness and authenticity of the chemistry between the two characters that we've seen in prior episodes. So that, yeah, I'm not sure that I'd say that one. Yeah, it's a little hard. Even like the opening, which think was meant to show, a moment of innocence, camaraderie among the civilians, where they're watching cartoons in the gymnasium that
Yeah.
Scott has put together. So you can see he'd be like the Hurley, if we were talking
Yeah.
Lost. The social person, the one that's, putting things together to kind of relieve that stress and find ways to kind of keep everybody kind of balanced emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as much as I like the scene and you see how Ben and Matt all together, it's kind of marred by the conversation that Dr. Glass and Tom are having
Yeah.
regarding the harness. So even though you think, oh, here's this, beautiful, relaxing scene, everyone's having a great time, but there are still conversations going on in the background. There's still concerns, there's still worries, to the point that even when Ben looks back at them, it's almost like I feel like you could almost read like he knew what they were talking about, you
Yeah.
know, type of
Yeah.
thing. Um, so, even though that scene's meant to be kind of a lighthearted, an easy moment filled with laughter. Right underneath is the constant threat and concerns and tensions and, need to survive. Um, so that was kind of an interesting scene. Maybe it could have been played a little bit more, or maybe even have a little bit more of that, or show more of the civilians, like kind of their numbers since they're supposed
Yeah,
to be 200. Um,
we really don't see much of anything.
mm-mm, no. And I think this is where I sadly, I feel like just generally speaking about this series so far, now that we're going to be knocking on the door to the finale next week. The code book is not the same or even as complex, I think, as the one that they had for Lost. And this is going to be really funny if it turns out that they had no code book, but I just can't possibly believe that. But um, I just feel like in Lost again, everything tied together, everything had significance, and there wasn't a discontinuity that would appear so easily. It might
Yeah,
appear if you do a really close reading and really plot out everything, then maybe you might see, you know, a little hole or a little, leak here or something like that. But, we've had a few now with falling skies, which is kind of sad because I'm losing a little bit of longevity with them. I'm like, I mean, I still think it's so far pretty good,
yeah,
but it is starting to show a little bit of the veneer peeling off just a little.
yeah. Yeah, the continuity with the story and the character reactions kind of isn't as seamless comparing it like to a show like Lost.
Yeah.
And you know, for favorite scenes, it was like really in this episode, it's one of those things where I'm pretty much on the same page with you.
Hmm.
Um, I I decided to go with something that was just like more of a mystery and more mellow because there were
Hmm.
so many like antagonistic, intense moments. Um, so like when the Ben and Scott moments,
Hmm.
um, I thought were, they're going to be, they're just more conversational.
Yeah.
Um, but when Ben goes back to Scott and say, "Hey, could you play around with the frequencies again?" And
Hmm.
Scott can see that it's impacting Ben.
Yeah.
And it actually, I don't think I noticed it the first time I watched it, but the second time I watch it, you hear Ben's hearing be dampened, like when after the signal
Yes.
goes.
Hmm.
So like where Scott's trying to talk to him, but it's almost like faded because he's so
There's almost like an
involved.
echo and a displacement with the sounds.
Like it's almost like it was like dampened by water or something, or
Yeah.
but I thought that was interesting. So that's probably where I would put my favorite or most interesting scene, just because of what that might mean. I feel like that's a more interesting storyline compared to like Weaver's, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
like through the episode. Um, and I don't know if there was anything that really like I really like Weaver and I like the actor.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying the performance is bad. I guess I just don't like seeing this chaotic. Um, maybe it is addiction. I don't know. But it's not the fondest thing to like dive through just because I don't know how um authentic it comes across.
Yeah.
Like because it seems like some like an episode like this and maybe the first part of the Sanctuary where a lot of things just felt like they were forced in to the
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if that's something that you want to like rush through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything in particular character wise where you were like you felt shined the brightest?
Like who my favorite character is.
Yeah.
I would love to give it to Weaver and Tom. And I mean, if I do partnerships, I feel like their back and forth is pretty good. I do wish though that with the addiction that they played a little bit more with that. I know in a television series, you've kind of got to get a lot done and you don't have a lot of time. These are 41-minute episodes because they were televised on television. So you've got to pace. You've got to know where your commercials are going. So it's not just telling the story from A
Yeah.
to B. You have to take into consideration, well, I'm 5 minutes in, I'm going to have a commercial here. Now I'm 25 minutes in, I'm going to have another commercial where do I build tension? So that way, naturally, these commercial breaks can go in. And I've only got 41 minutes to tell my story. So I feel like if Weaver had more to work with, or Will Patton had more to work with, because I mean, I think he's a fine actor, and I think Weaver is a fascinating character. I just think that the writing didn't do the best service to the actor or the character in this case, so it's hard to give it to him, but at the same time, I would like to. So let me say this is my dream list if I could. You know, would be Weaver. Um, Tom as well, because he's reacting and trying to be active at the same time. But he's also stirring things up. So I'm not sure that he got the quality time that he as an actor and a character needed. Because if he is a professor, he should be able to articulate a bit more about this trust or to give us a quick little history lesson, anything that could say, or even say, this is not documented in history. We are pioneers. You could be a pioneer by trusting and not just demanding. Trust in your people. That could have been a good way to go, you
Yeah.
know. So if it could have been Weaver and Tom, um, and of course, my kind of probably runners up would have been Pope, who's always true to his character. I think that whoever's writing him, they know him. It was
Yeah.
always kind of like Sawyer. We always knew Sawyer. Sawyer's the bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sawyer's the bad boy. So is Pope. Pope. So, but I mean, I did like Pope. I thought Matt got more time, and I thought he did a fine job as a young actor delivering lines and kind of holding his own with an adult. I thought went well. And the fact that he was able to physically, without words, shrink up in his shell when Pope came up to him, like just like really gonna plow into him. You figure, what is he gonna do? And then he chuckles and says, "You got to do better than that, kid."
Yeah.
Um, and I love that. I love that. And so I think that if should, would, could, if everything aligned right with this episode, that's kind of what I think I would have done. So,
Yeah.
but there's too many holes. It's really hard to say. Um, yeah. So I think that's where I land this week. How about for you?
Um, I listed had in my brain. I listed three. And I listed Tom because of him trying to um figure out a way to work around Weaver while still getting him to see that they want him in command. Um,
Hmm.
um, and then so I'll give it to him for an honorable mention. I agree on your points. I feel like if they could have done the sequences better or figured out a way to tell the story or provide more time,
Hmm.
I think Weaver and Tom together that could have been something really great. Um, and then the other two people I mentioned were Scott and Ben. Um,
Hmm.
just because, Scott seems to be, like you said, kind of like the ultimate support role.
Hmm.
He's kind of being the man of all trades, doing all these different things. And so I'll probably give it to Ben. Um, not just because he's realizing the radio signals affect him, but I also feel like he's in giving Rick opportunities to like say, "Hey, come to the light side." Like, don't abandon this skitter dream. And but at the same breath, he's trying to also gain information from Rick.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's trying to say, "Well, what's happening to us?" I
Yeah.
think he's trying to like because Rick isn't saying a lot. Let's be honest.
No.
He's not saying a whole lot. He's just saying they will come for us. I'm just and and I think, obviously, Ben is creeped out by him, but he's not sitting still. He's not just waiting around. He's trying to be
Mm-mm.
proactive, trying
Yeah.
to gain information. He goes back to Scott and say, "Hey, let's figure this out." And so ultimately, at the end of the episode, we see them both go to Tom to fill him in,
Yeah.
which is, I hope, is going to be a big point moving forward for the next episode, and maybe even for the future seasons.
Yeah.
Uh, but I do agree with your idea of this episode kind of showing flaw is a strong word with the way the show or the episode was put together.
Hmm.
Longevity in continuing to watch. You know, I I know Megan and I watched Under the Dome on CBS once upon a time, and we thought the first season was amazing. It was
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
And we were watching this, started the first episode of the second season. We were like, what the hell is this? It was a completely like different thing that I was like, I don't even know why they are doing what they're doing. They
Hmm.
introducing new characters randomly.
Oh,
Um,
weird.
and so with an episode like this, where you see this character just shoved into the mix, like
Yeah.
it reminds me of that feeling I had once upon a time. And I hope the season finale pulls us back in.
I hope
However,
so
I
too.
know we've got a huge list of things that we want to cover. TV shows, movies, we've got,
Mhm.
quite a list. So we don't have to continue with season two. We can jump to another mini
Hmm.
series or long series, whatever we want. We're in control of our fun time.
That's right. That's right. because we're here to have fun, obviously, and talk about shows that interest us. And, we may start out interested and then find out that, we're not so much enamored anymore. So that
Yeah.
does happen, and I think, you bring up a good point with regards to writing, how important that is. But I think it also brings up the point of our consumption basis now versus what it was back then, even with Lost and having to wait, a week or more before you get to the next episode. So there it is different level of need of content and how it was being consumed. And I do genuinely feel that I'm almost, I don't want to say that having a long running television show is bad, but I think it's a lot harder to pull off now in this day and age when we can binge. And I've watched a few shows where I'm like, man, first season's just like powerhouse. You get into the second season and you're starting to see the cracks and by the end of season two, I'm like, I'm done. It's
Yeah.
just not that great anymore. And I so, where do you strike a balance between having maybe a shorter run series or a series that only has like 8 or 10 episodes per season, so that way you can, I don't know, have a little bit more longevity?
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting, and how does that work in syndication? Back in the day when, we were really young, television series were 30, 40 episodes. And then you were looking to get into syndication. And now it's with streaming and everything else. It's a whole different landscape, and
Big
how
time.
that works. So
Yeah. Um, well, would love to know if anyone's watching or has this on the background. I would love to
yeah.
know what shows are people excited about right now.
Mhm.
You know, I currently have access to Prime Video, Netflix. I think you do too, Michelle.
Yep,
And,
I've got
you
those.
know,
Yeah.
we've got some DVDs. I know Tubi's a big option for some freebie stuff.
Yep.
Um, but I would love to know if anyone has a show or movie that they think would be interesting to hear us cover.
Yep.
Leave it down in the comments. Maybe we can cover it, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, other than that, are there any other parts of this episode worth mentioning? Or are we ready to move on?
Probably ready to move on, but I will say that if you want to see Pope with a regular military haircut,
Mm,
go stream Stargate SG-1 because he is, I think, Major Davis or something like that in the series. And so I think I'm in season 3 right now. And he has appeared a few times. I keep having to like, that's Pope, because he looks so different, and of course that series was um, a number of years ago now. So this is his pre-Pope days, and it's fun to
early
see him.
2000s?
I guess so. What's interesting, just really quick aside, is that when I watched the first season of Stargate SG-1, I was amazed at how fuzzy it was.
Mm,
How much technology we've made just in the last 25 years versus when that was being shot. Even to the point of like, even Lost looks better than Stargate SG-1, the first season. I'm just kind of amazed at how fuzzy, and it needs a restoration,
yeah,
I think. So maybe that's a project for somebody that might be listening or watching. But keep those beloved IPs going and make sure they're around for future generations.
yeah.
So, but that's it for me. So.
Well, I think we'll wrap up here. Everyone who's watching, listening, thank you for having us on in your home. Michelle and I love to chat. and talk about all of these things to give us a break from the real world. If you
Oh
haven't,
yeah.
please like and subscribe. Drop us a comment about your favorite character, maybe another show or movie you want us to talk about. And then I guess until the season finale of Falling Sky season one, we will see everyone on the flip side.
Mhm.